Let's do it.
Awesome. So I'm here with Kyle Inserra out of New York. If you follow me on LinkedIn, which otherwise you're probably not watching this, there's absolutely you see Kyle. There's no way you don't. He's all over my LinkedIn feed. It's phenomenal out there. Fantastic restaurant brokerage up in New York. Kyle, I'm really excited to sit here and talk restaurants in reality. I mean, it's a lot to talk about.
Of course, man. Anytime. I love that.
Awesome. Actually, you had a great idea, and I did this. You posted last week on LinkedIn, go buy some merchandise of some of your favorite restaurants. There's a restaurant I loved as a kid up in North Carolina, some summers I went to. So I went and bought, the Sanitary Fish Market is the name. So certainly appropriate, but great totally. Memories. Bought a couple of T-shirts there. I thought it was a great idea. Go throw a few bucks towards some of these restaurants buying some T-shirts if you can't buy their food.
Yeah, I think why I thought that was a great idea. One, I think it's great to walk around and support, these restaurants during this time. It's kind of like the new sports jerseys. But like a lot of times restaurants invest in that and like, all right, let's give this merch a shot. And maybe people want to buy a hat every once in a while. So they're probably sitting on some inventory. So the way I look at it is like free cash to them. Like this stuff was sitting back there and see if you can just give her a couple of shirts. So that's awesome that you did that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's interesting. So I know you're involved in the restaurant business, restaurant brokerage, but you're not one of these guys like me. If all of a sudden I got into restaurants, it's a restaurant broker. You're a restaurateur. I mean, I looked at your background. I didn't realize when you went to Cornell. I've got a nephew that actually is dying to go to Cornell. He's a hell of a cook as a kid. So I mean, you're the French Culinary Institute. I mean, you know food.
Yeah, my first job ever was in advertising out of college. That wasn't a great fit for me, oddly enough. But then I went to go chase the money to work at Morgan Stanley. And then, right after 9/11, that wasn't so great. And I enrolled in culinary school.
Oh, wow.
And that was my life for about 15 years. So
wow. So after college, so as an adult, essentially went and did that.
Yeah, for sure. I was I think 24. So
fantastic. So, I mean, obviously anybody who cares about the restaurant sector, and yeah, I do, and I know you really, really do. I mean, this is a tough time. I mean, it's not to men. I mean, for the operators. I mean, you are an operator too. Am I right? I mean,
yeah. So I'm definitely on both sides here, and it's tough because we have been very fortunate on my ownership side. Lala Taqueria, we've been fortunate in that we were already kind of built for this dynamic.
Okay.
So
to go, or what do you mean?
We very small footprint, about 950 square feet. A lot of pickup and to go, and a lot of technology. So a lot of online ordering. All our onboarding is online, so that can be done remotely for any new hires now. We have to bring them in for any paperwork and all that stuff. So in a way, we were built for it. It's just hard seeing some of these, older school restaurants that are not built for this kind of stuff. And, a lot of them don't even know where to start. And I was talking to somebody yesterday and I said, I'd really hate to see some of these businesses go out, these restaurants go out just because they don't have the information. So that's kind of what I see my goal is right now. I mean, it's hard to transact on stuff. We're not looking at sites necessarily for a whole lot of people, but just being there and being a resource is, I think, what's important right now.
I mean, we all know about, I think everybody knows about PPP, obviously, some government loan programs. What are you kind of coaching these guys to do?
I think the first step really is to identify what you want to do. So many restaurants are, I think they're going to struggle with, well, I'm going to open back up and be that Friday night date spot. Well, you're not. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen to the extent that you're going to make any money. Okay. So what are you going to do? How are you going to change your business? Because that's, I think, what's important.
You say change your business long-term or just to get to bridge?
I think, it doesn't have to be so drastic. I just think like, well, how are you going to, you have a small vestibule here. People used to wait in here, cram to do that. You can't do that anymore. So like, what are you going to do? Are you going to make this bigger? Are you going to put markers on the floor? Is it going to be remote check-in with your phone from outside? Like, let's start thinking about the things. I don't think it's going to be a long term. I think we're going to go back to cozy date night spots and dive bars and all that fun stuff. But in the short term, the short term could be 12 to 18 months.
Right.
You got to start
to survive it. You got to survive that period.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just thinking it through, because some of these guys are like generational restaurants and they did things the same way. And they might just be quick to say, you know what, forget it. We're not going to do it. And I would just hate to see them lose more money by diving in the wrong way.
Right. No, and it's sad. I mean, particularly in a city like New York or Philadelphia, so many cities that you've got generational restaurants that are phenomenal food. You hate. I mean, it's almost like like with the dinosaurs, where something wiped out a generation, and we're at risk of having that happen with the restaurant sector. We're at risk of losing a generation of phenomenal restaurant operators and restaurant chains and restaurants that we all love.
Yeah, and at the same time, as you know, even though I live in a borderline QSR kind of restaurant world myself, I don't want to see the death of the date night spot, or the place that you go for a special event. Like graduation parties would be big this time of year. A lot of restaurants missing out on that revenue. But I think it's just gonna have to be a little more thoughtful, and I think they can survive it. Obviously there's the landlord piece. Are they playing ball with you, or what that all looks like? But I think the number one thing aside from that would be figuring out your cash position. A lot of restaurants, unfortunately, that cash position is zero or in the red, and identifying what you owe people and what you're really looking at when you open up. I mean, some cases it just might make sense to close. Some cases it might make sense to give the keys back and look for a more affordable space. But so many different variables. I think it just helps to talk it through. And
you mentioned the cash position. That was going to be one of my questions. I mean, you helped me through this a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago. I remember when this first started happening, and I remember hearing about restaurants aren't going to make it if they can't. It's in 30 days. And I asked you. I mean, Kyle, come on. I mean, in 30 days, seriously? And I think we all, if you're not in the business, you're thinking they've got to have these cash reserves, and they built up it's just not how the restaurant sector works, you told me. I mean, can you walk us through that?
No. Obviously the big boys are different. The big chain guys and some of the more well-established brands are different. But, your 1 to 3 unit operators are living month to month.
So usually paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly. It's the equivalent to paycheck to paycheck. So if you're the average restaurant doing, 1.5 to 1.7 million a year, and you're on 30-day terms with most of your vendors, you're paying those bills that night. It's not that money is spent as it comes in the door. So, I mean, this is a business where, 90% of what we make goes back out the door. There's not a lot of margin for saving there, even when you put the whole family in the place, So, without the landlords stepping up to save a lot of these restaurants, unfortunately, the cash reserves are not there to bite the bullet for, 1, 2, 3, 4 months for sure.
And you mentioned, I guess the margins are just that razor thin in the business in reality.
Yeah, it is, because, a lot of that is due to, and I hate to say this, as much as, I love the restaurant business, this will shake out people who probably should not have been in the business, obviously. And it's sad to think, but, I try to take a positive spin on it and say, well, maybe you'll look back at this and say, you know what, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wasn't cut out to be there. I didn't need to, have my mom mortgage her house or take that loan from the bank. I didn't need to do that stuff. They were trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So I try to think of it that way, but for sure it's going to be a shakeout. That's going to be, I think we're anticipating it. I think it's going to be worse than even what we think about, but I'm hoping for a quick rebound for a lot of these guys.
No kidding. Yeah. And it's definitely a business. If you don't love it, I mean, in spite of now it's incredibly challenging, but in normal times, I mean, it's, better than I do. I mean, it's long hours, it's hard work, and it's a tough way to make a living.
Yeah. And if you don't have, like you said, if you don't have a passion for it, there are, a lot of chefs right now who are going to their restaurant and just cooking because it's their therapy. It's what they do. It's like what they know how to do. And it's sad to think that you have all this talent, this culinary talent that is just cooking things. And a lot of them are finding ways, to feed nursing homes or hospitals, frontline workers, kind of stuff. But they're anxious to get back to work because that's just in their nature of what they do. And I think those are the guys that are gonna survive.
Yeah. Well, so the next step, I mean, everything we read is we're going to 25% occupancy for dine-in, 50%, whatever it is. What is that? I mean, again, as a restaurant operator, I know your restaurant now is more to-go oriented, which is great. But for the date night places, you said, what does it look like to be 25-ish% occupancy? How long can that even work? I mean, how do you think this plays out?
It's interesting. I was on a call the other day. We're on like all these calls all the time, but it seems like it was a long time ago. But it was earlier this week, and it was a bunch of New York City operators, multi-unit operators, and we're talking in regards to the PPP and opening up in New York City at 25%, for example. And they're like, well, how does that make sense? How does that make sense? Because 25% occupancy does not mean 25% of my business.
Right.
Who's going to police it? And I pay people out with the PPP loan and I'm meeting the requirements, but I'm not making any money. And, we don't have a vaccine. We don't have all this stuff. I got my cooks coming by subway from the Bronx, by bus from Queens. I'm putting these guys in a situation for what? For what? Like what? I can pay them to stay home. Maybe it's another conversation, but there's got to be something for the employer, I think at some point. So that's what these guys were saying. Like, that's great. I could pay these guys in 25% occupancy, but who's it taking care of? The landlord and that. I'm still not making any money.
I say 25%. Are you better off? I mean, a lot of restaurateurs looking at it like, I may as well just be closed.
For sure.
Or at least you're doing to go, not dine in. Let me just do to go.
Yeah, and those guys who don't, it's not so easy to do to go. That's the thing. It's you think of the place like a steakhouse or like a little bit of a higher end, middle to higher end restaurant that you would go there to get a multi-course dinner. You could make some meal things to go, but the reality is the price point for them doesn't make any sense, or they don't want to invest in it's a different mindset. They don't want to put their steak in a paper container.
Well, Morton's, I just say at the level you're talking to Morton's or Ruth's Chris, Texas Roadhouse has done a really good job, and historically they did not want to do to go for the reason you said. They don't want to put their steak in a plastic container, and they're not high end, but it's not cheap.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of that is, that's why I said going back to the beginning is figure out who you want to be. Are you going to be this place that still serves, $48 steaks and $20 cocktails and, or are you going to figure out another concept, or are you going to get some cash to ride it out? I mean, it's not an easy uniform decision for anybody.
You think a lot of people do make that change? Like you said, the guy who was maybe a higher end steakhouse does become all of a sudden selling more affordable?
It depends. I think it depends on who they are, because I think the longer standing restaurants are going to have a hard time. I don't hate to see them throw good money after bad, and try to create some watered down version of what they were known for. It could eventually create, I think, a white space for some of these more traditional restaurants, but how long that will be coming, I don't know. And do you have the cash to ride it out?
What about, like in Little Italy and these sections, and I'm not a New York guy, you obviously are. I mean, these sections of, New York that are obviously known for their food and other areas too. What does that look like in a year, do you think?
Those places are notoriously tight. The waiter's got to lean way over the table to hear you and do that kind of stuff. It's just getting over the psyche. The neighborhood itself, you can't walk down the street without touching shoulders with people in some of those neighborhoods. The Lower East Side, Little Italy, to your point, like it's a very densely populated area. And I don't know how, somebody could be coughing because they got something caught in their throat and we'll shut the whole restaurant down.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what makes people feel comfortable. That's the X factor. The money, the concept, the pickup, to go. I asked an informal poll on TikTok of all places, and 70% of people said they had no interest. If their restaurant was opening next week, would they have an interest in going back? And 70% said no.
Yeah.
I mean, take that for what it's worth, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. And maybe the answer is it's too soon to tell. I'm sure you've given a lot of thought to this. What do you, looking out 6, 12, 18 months, what do you see, or is it just too soon to tell in reality?
Here in New York, I'm very happy for operators that the weather's going to be nice.
Right. Does that make a big difference, you feel like?
For the people who have outdoor space.
Okay.
I think it's going to be tough and frustrating for the owners who will look across the street to the guy who has a large patio and the chain restaurants that may see a little even more of a boost because they, I'm thinking over here of a development in Yonkers that, the chain restaurants have, P.F. Chang's is a huge outdoor patio, and it's not as popular as some of the other local restaurants who don't, or they have 2 or 3 tables outside. So I think, I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll ease people around here a little bit. I think towards the end of the fall, they're predicting another little bout with this, but I think it will be hopefully kind of like a switch where you're like, all right, time to be a little bit more careful. We're all packed in a little bit more. But the growing sentiment that I hear is people are just, they want to get back to their life.
Right.
And I know that that's sometimes not possible, but hopefully that's the warmer weather will help with that.
I say that helps, and food is a part of our lives. I mean, you mentioned the chains. Out of curiosity, what do you see as far as a difference between chains versus mom and pops? Other than, like you said, they may have the bigger patios, which is not a small thing.
No, I mean,
they got cash reserves, a lot of them.
Yeah, easier access to capital.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times the fallback for, like a lot of people have to remember that some of these restaurants are started by 2 or 3 guys that borrowed money from their dad to get the doors open. And, maybe dad's retired now or out of work and he's just not in a position to lend that kind of money. A bank's not going to write you a loan. The PPP didn't help you. So it's just really hard. I think that the chains are going to be, fortunate enough to have the drive-through rather, some key, obviously real estate.
Yeah.
But who knows if they're going to be able to sustain or what the public perception is going to be of them. It could be too sterile for them. It could be too, I know it's different by region, but here I think, particularly in New York City and parts of Connecticut, people want to go to their local mom and pop places that they remember the faces there. And that'll be interesting to see how that plays out for sure.
Particularly in areas like New York. I mean, here, in the suburbs, you do get more of the chain restaurants. But even then, I told my wife the other day, it's like we're trying to do more to go. We had been cooking, and we're pretty crappy cooks, to be honest. But we've been cooking. I said let's go back to starting to go. But I said, but I want to really let's think of the local restaurants. I mean, not Outback. I mean, nothing wrong. I know they're really trying to survive too, or chains. But let's kind of the local restaurants that really need the support and kind of trying to help them.
Yeah, and that sentiment has been. It's been going a little bit further than even that. It was like people calling up. So we stopped taking phone orders. We're a small place, so a lot of people. We have 4 people work on the floor like a night like tonight. And prior to this, phone rings. Whoever's there, grab it, take the order. That doesn't seem like such a great idea right now. So we stopped taking phone orders.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, so we have people though, but occasionally, like as we're getting set up, people will call. And we have one person dedicated to handling that. And the people will say, well, what's the best way for me to order? Because I don't want you to have to pay a fee.
Right.
So when I hear that, it really, to hear that the thought process is actually, it's hitting people on that level and we're not just slinging tacos at people. So I would say support like you're doing, support the mom and pops because they're not going to be in a position to just infuse some capital in this in like June to get off the ground.
No. Well, Kyle, thanks for everything you're doing. You're really, even before this, you were fantastic as far as teaching and throwing your knowledge out there about the sector. And now in the last 2-3 months, it's really critical. And we need to be supporting these restaurants and hope as many of them as possible can make it. They're not all going to realistically, but hopefully as many as possible.
No, they're not, and maybe even despite some of the things that I've said on here, I would bet heavily. I'm very bullish on the spirit and the strength of the independent, 1 to 5 unit restaurant operator that's actually hands-on. That same energy that got them open, scratching and clawing, borrowing money, working the line, washing dishes, doing whatever. That same energy is what's going to get them back on their feet, and I'm optimistic about that. So, thank you.
In reality, I mean, it's similar. It's kind of like evolution. In reality, those that do survive are able to get through this. There's going to be more market share there. There's going to be less competition in reality. So
yeah, there's going to be the good operators. If they these concepts that they've been kicking off in the back of their head, like you had said earlier, I don't even know if we mentioned it earlier. I've been having some of these talks, but like the smaller footprints are going to be in demand. So if you have an idea for a coffee shop and you're a good operator, you might find somebody who does have the cash and is willing to bet on you to move it forward. So it's not going to be all doom and gloom, I don't think. I think it's going to be sad. A lot of people are going to fall out. But, it is what it is to some certain extent. And we hope that the sector as a whole stays together.
Right, and it will. Well, thanks, Kyle, for
Yeah.
your time. Hal, I mean, obviously you're on the brokerage side as well, not to mention as a restaurant operator. Hal, you're a phenomenal firm with Sabre Real Estate. How can folks best reach you?
The best way to reach me is either on LinkedIn or at Instagram at Kyle Inserra, or ask Barry. He knows how to find me.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kyle. Be safe, be well.
Appreciate
and
it, brother. You too, man.
Thanks.
Take care. I'll see you there.